all the stories in my new book are about things that happened in my life. So I didn't look for them or make them up. They kind of came to me. I remembered things, and I started thinking about the things I remembered, and then, as I always do when I'm trying to figure things out, I started to write. Two lives, when I use that phrase, really means the life that I lead just as a normal person who's gone through her life and, done some work and done some teaching and some writing and had some kids and been married twice. and then behind that life, which I think of as kind of normal life, is the lives of my parents, Charles and Ann Lindbergh, who became very famous through their aviation adventures and their writing and the tragedies in their lives and the newsworthy items in their lives or the newsworthy experiences. So they became a focus for the country and sometimes for the world. And they continue to be of interest. Their lives continue to be of interest. So I might be going along, shoveling snow and making lunch, and I might get a call from the National Air and Space Museum with a question, or I might get a letter from someone who has a research question, or I might get an email from a friend who met somebody who has a connection with somebody who thinks that they have a secret to tell me about my family. And it's a strange double existence, and I've come to get used to it, maybe not entirely used to it, but I've come to terms with having those two lives existing at the same time. My life being two lives. I don't think that my being the daughter of Charles and Ann Morrow Lindbergh affects my children very much at all. I think it mostly affects them if they think it's affecting me. I think this kind of fame in the family gets diluted over the generations. I think it's the first generation, the children of the famous family. I mean, not as much as the parents themselves, who were inundated with attention and speculation and mail, unbelievable mail all their lives. The first generation is hit hardest, but the second generation, the children who have to figure it out, my brothers, my sister, and I think it affected us quite a bit, and I think it affects our children much, much less. They have less interest, they feel less the reverberations of the history, and they don't get the questions, the mail, the requests, whatever it might be. Those go to the first generation, the children. I think it's always kind of crazy for the people who suddenly become the object of huge attention from whether it's in their own country or global. But I think it was particularly difficult for my father, especially because that wasn't really ever his interest. He wanted to fly from New York to Paris. He wanted to get the prize, the money for doing that, which I think was about $25,000, which was huge in those days. And he thought he probably could do it, but he did not have any clue that it would make him famous. I mean, that was a side effect. That had nothing to do with his interest in making that flight. And for my mother, of course, she was a diplomat's daughter. She knew how to behave in public situations. She was well brought up. She was very shy, but she was ready for social life. To be in a large group of people, she knew which fork to use and all of that kind of thing. But I don't think she was at all prepared for the enormous influx of attention that came with being the wife of Charles Lindbergh. That it's interesting to me to consider whether having famous parents is a negative thing or a positive thing in my life, and I'll never be able to tell anyone which, if in fact it isn't a little of each, because they're my parents, and all you know is what you grew up with. You don't have any way, no way of telling what it would be like if they had not been famous, or if we had not known that they were famous, which is another question. I don't think you get to compare what your childhood is with what it isn't. We just were born into this. We probably didn't feel the full force of our famous parents or what they meant to the world until we left our childhood, because they were very protective. So we were able to live, I think, fairly normally growing up. And then it was a little bit later that we realized what a big deal this was, certainly for other people. People who put their lives out there in order to be famous, wow. All I can say is beware of what you wish for.